like I said earlier, being good at what you do really kind of only gets you to zero, right? Sounding like you're good at what you do, appearing like you're good at what you do, gets you noticed.
You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you'll receive tips and techniques to advance yourself. I'm your host, Dom Brightman, and every week we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. On a quick side note, be sure to check out Going North the book. It's available in ebook, audio, as well as paperback form for those who love to read a traditional book. Now let's get on with the show.
And today on the Going North podcast, we're coming back at you again with another author. But this one's a powerhouse, baby. This author is a powerhouse. She is a publicity maven with an award-winning best-selling book. She stays in the media, and she knows how to stay on top of her game and help others stay on top of their game as well. And you're probably wondering who this wonderful person is. It is the one, the only Tsufit. How are you today?
I am awesome, especially after that amazing introduction. Whoa, I'm going to quote you on that, Dom. Thank you for that. I'm not 100% sure if it's a best-selling book, but it's definitely an award-winning book. And let's just say that on my block, it's a best-selling book. Full disclosure. There you go.
Hey, it's A-okay. We've got to be best-selling somewhere, right?
Well, you know what? Actually, if you go into the minute categories of when it came out on Amazon, yeah, I've done their motivation /this/that. It definitely was a number one.
Oh, yes, ma'am, indeed. I'm looking forward to this because I've been listening to some of your other interviews, and you are one heck of an entertaining woman.
Cannot be denied, Dom. Why pretend to be modest?
Woo! So of course, we're going to start the question you're probably used to hearing is, why don't you go ahead and tell us a bit about your background and how you got to where you currently are.
Absolutely. So a little kid, and I used to gather the neighborhood kids on the deck and put on shows. I always wanted to be an actress, but my parents wanted me to be something practical, like a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or at least marry one, right? So I became a lawyer, that whole Perry Mason thing, and I thought it was glamorous. And so did that for about 10 years, popped out 4 baby girls in 4 years during the time that I was a lawyer. One day woke up, had that Peggy Lee moment, that is that all there is moment, and ditched the law, kept the kids, and decided to follow my dream, which was to be a singer, an actress, a comedian, kind of like Ginger on Gilligan's Island at the time. So,
nice.
Glamorous, right? Actually, yeah, never glamorous. I always got cast in the friend role, like you've got your Julia Roberts, and then you got her best friend who's like, Rosie O'Donnell? Mary Tyler Moore and Rhoda, I'd be Rhoda, right? Barbie and Midge, I'd be Midge. Anyway. So, yeah, can't crack that. But anyway, it's more fun. So that's what I did. I did that for a while, and then I decided, it's really important to feed the kids more than once a week. So I decided to figure out how can I monetize this thing that I'm doing without going back to law, but how can I make money, just having fun and making people laugh and giving unsolicited advice, which I do for free anyway. It's a Jewish thing. So I sat there, I took myself to a Greek restaurant, sat outside and kind of interviewed myself and said, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up, right? This after having the 4 kids. And I slowly realized that people were asking me how I got all the publicity. So when I put out a music CD, I Was on a national TV documentary for 4 years in a comedic role. It was Ludmila Kropotnik was my this comedically evil cafeteria lady in a national TV show. So I asked myself, how can I take all that and turn it into something that people will pay for? Well, what they were interested in was how I got all this publicity. So I told you I put out a music CD, and I was stuck home with 4 kids and no car and like 1,000 CDs in the basement. So I thought, okay, how can I get this out there? And I learned about publicity. And occasionally when I would go sing at, folk festivals or wherever, there'd be some big head honcho, or, some big opening act that everybody'd heard of, national or international singer. There'd be 50 other acts that nobody's heard of, and I was one of the 50 acts that nobody's heard of, right? So I go into the town, and all of a sudden everybody sees the newspaper. There's a huge, big article on the famous guy, and there's a huge, big article about me, and there's 49 other disgruntled people saying, who the hell is she? And I did that town after town after town, city after city after city, and everybody's saying, like, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? How'd you do that? So before you knew it, they started asking me, can I pay you money and you'll teach me how to do that? That's what I did. And I moved on from, performers. Actually, I never really specialized in performance. I'm more for entrepreneurs and business owners and professionals who kind of wanted to get ahead in their careers and get known. Did that for a number of years until I started charging more than a lot of lawyers charge, and people said, Tsufit, can't you write a book? So I wrote a book. It's called Step Into the Spotlight, A Guide to Getting Noticed. And as you said, it won awards in the U.S., and it is a popular book because it's written in the voice of a comedian with the head of a lawyer. So it's a strategic marketing book, but it's not one of those boring business books. And we kind of use the theme that all business is show business. I kind of learned that by having one foot in both arenas, right? I was in business and I was in show business. So I realized that if I could bring a little color to business and liven it up a bit, that maybe those boring real estate agents and accountants and actuarial scientists who go to the, breakfast networking meeting at the Board of Trade, if they could figure out how to add a little color, maybe they get more clients, and that's what happened.
So more color leads to more clients.
More color, more flavor, more humor. I mean, right? You got to stand out. You've got a podcast, right? Are you going to have some boring accountant on your podcast that you meet somewhere and they, this accountant really wants some publicity, really wants access to your audience, but, there's no spark, there's no life, there's no energy, there's no nothing, but they're a really good accountant, right? And most accountants and real estate agents and lawyers and professionals think, and I thought this too, I have to tell you, okay, full disclosure, I will admit this to your audience. When I was a lawyer, I was under the mistaken idea, a mistaken impression that being great at what you do is enough. And I was great at what I did. I was Dean's List, at law school. I think I was 4th in my school, and it was the hardest school to get into the country, right? Serious, egghead, whatever. And so I thought, and when I went to get a job as a lawyer, I had a ton of interviews, and when I was articling, I got a lot of offers. And I thought, okay, as long as I'm good at what I do, I work hard, it's going to work. Well, that's not actually the way business works. Business works on perception, right? So whether it's, and on 2 levels really, both internally in the firm and externally. So internally, let's say you've got 2 people and somebody asks you, let's say you're an underling and your big boss says, I want that factum by next week, okay? And typically, and I hate to be sexist about this, but this was my experience at the time, typically the men that got asked would say, sure, no problem, and not hand it in on time. Typically the women would say, yeah, I'll do my best, I'll try, and get it in early. And who made the better impression there? Who? The guy who said he'd do it, right? It wasn't about what you're delivering, it was about the perception, right? That the I'll handle it perception. Once I figured that out, I didn't really figure it out when I was in law. I figured it out after I left law. Once I understood that the way, and I said internally and externally, so I explained internally, externally, once I understood that if people hear of you, they automatically think you're better at what you do, right? That's why it's so hard for celebrities. That's why it took so many years for celebrities to get in trouble, right, for all the crazy things that they've done over the years, right? Because people assume that celebrities are trustworthy. That's why people pay celebrities to endorse toothpaste or, whatever it is that or Tom Selleck is selling reverse mortgages. Why do we need a reverse mortgage from Magnum PI, because somehow we trust him. And so if your listeners can figure out what it is that they want to be known for and focus on that, they'll find a lot easier time in their career.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And I got to give you credit for being one heck of an awesome communicator with all that experience you got. It's freaking amazing. So to get to this level of where you currently are, I'm pretty sure there's things that keep you motivated. What keeps you motivated to keep your name out there in addition to your 4 wonderful children?
Well, it's kind of, okay, there's a few levels to it, okay? On one level, it's fun, right? Okay, let's admit there's some ego involved, right? I'm not going to pretend that I have no ego. So it's fun. I just threw out, okay, because I'm over it now. But I just threw out thousands of copies of hundreds of newspaper articles, okay, about myself. And I just put them in recycling because I thought at this point, who cares? And nobody has physical press kits anymore, right? But at the time, like when there was a full-page article, whatever, like I'd get 100 copies because it's like it's kind of it's a high, number one. And number two, it was good actually for promotion. So to get the next gig, you send them the clippings from the last gig, right? So that's the second one. Part one is ego, and two, it helps with visibility. And then visibility leads to credibility. Because as I just explained, for some reason, if somebody sees you, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 places, and they keep hearing about you, and then other people tell them about you. I remember once going to a session with a new client. It was his first session with me. He had already booked the meeting because he met me at some kind of Chamber of Commerce networking meeting. But he showed up to our session with a clipping of a full-page article in the Toronto Star about me with a big photo that just came out that morning that he was meeting with me. So it wasn't what got me the visibility because he already met me, but it also didn't hurt with the credibility. So he was able to feel really good about his investment of meeting with me. He was able to tell other people about it and spread the word. So, ego, visibility, credibility. But the thing that really motivates me is really none of those things. The thing that motivates me is when I get a client, and I don't see them in person as much as I used to now. It's usually off over the phone because they're international in France or Hong Kong or Germany or wherever they are. But when I was doing it in person or, even on the phone, I can kind of hear it. You can hear when their eyes light up. You can feel it in their voice. That's still a high for me. You see a crooked picture on the wall and you help them straighten it a little bit, or if they're too straight, you help them make it crooked a little bit to add a little flavor. And then it works for them, and they attract clients, and they're, really energized and jazzed about it. That never really gets old, Dom.
You're right about that. It's when you make someone's day, it kind of makes your day even better because it's like you help somebody and you get to hear their joy and see their joy.
Yeah, Dom, by the way, we interrupt this podcast for an announcement, and that is I do a ton of podcasts. In fact, I don't know, you're the third or fourth in the last few days that I've done this week. You have one of the best voices, and you can check all the other podcasts. I don't think I've said that to anybody else, right? So you go listen to the last 100 podcasts I did or radio. I don't think I've said it to anybody else. You have the best voice. Like you have a voice for radio, like terrestrial radio, if they're still doing that, real radio, what people call, although podcasts are more popular nowadays. What a great voice. Have you done radio outside this?
I've done a couple of radio shows in the past to promote my book. So, yeah, I've done a couple. I've been getting that since I was probably about 16.
Yeah, great voice. Great voice. But enough about you.
Thanks a bunch.
Enough about you. Let's talk about me. No, I think it's awesome. Right. I think it's awesome, Dom, because some people sound not that confident or whatever, and you've got the confident, you've got the swagger, you've got and that's also part of stepping into the spotlight is not. I'm not saying you don't have to have the real goods. Okay, I'm not saying you don't have to really be good at what you do, but like I said earlier, being good at what you do really kind of only gets you to zero, right? Sounding like you're good at what you do, appearing like you're good at what you do, gets you noticed, and you've got that, right? So going in, I assume you're good at what you do. I don't know yet, But you're definitely good at this podcasting thing.
Oh, wow, thank you. And you're great at what you do so well. So I'm pretty sure there have been some other books that have inspired you to write yours, because I believe there was, 2 or 3 books that you were writing before the actual one that got an award.
Oh, a guy who does his research. Oh, my God, this never happens. All right. So, no, there used to be a guy on TV in Canada. I think his name is Brian Linehan, who used to interview Barbra Streisand and all these big stars, and he would always say something to them, like ask a question and say something in background, and they'd always say, "How did you know that?" Like they'd always say. So I'm saying to you, how did you know? Okay, it's true. I started because my first coaching business was called Follow That Dream, right? And I wasn't really going to come up with a name for my coaching business, but I took some business course, and they kind of forced us to, just for the sake of discussion, and I chose that and ended up using it. It's also an Elvis movie, I think, so I had a hard time getting the URL for it. But so I used that for a while, and then I decided that I would move to Step in the Spotlight. Sorry, just repeat. My mind wandered about books that inspired me. So I wrote a book called Follow That Dream first. I started to write it. And then I said to myself, you know what, there's a zillion quadrillion books that are kind of rah, go for it. In fact, there's a book that was written where he featured me in a chapter of the book, which is almost, I think it's called Live Your Dreams or something, right? And I thought, what, am I going to write another book like that? So I nixed that. Then I was going to write How to Be Your Own Publicist, right, and just focus on publicity. And then I went to the store one day, and there was a book that just came out called How to Be Your Own Publicist. And I go, yeah, okay, that's not so original. So I basically took my whole How to Be Your Own Publicist book and condensed it into Chapter 5 of the Step into the Spotlight book, because it's still a very important part of how you step into the spotlight. But then I focused on the other things that people need, which is the branding and the positioning, which we cover in Chapter 3, and I call that I'm Ready for My Close-Up, Mr. DeMille, like Are You Being Seen, Be Your Own Casting Director stuff. And then Chapter 4 is this thing on? How comedians always say that. Is this thing on? Are you being heard? And about the script and the 30 seconds. And then Chapter 5, which is the big one, is about publicity. And then Chapter 6, Everybody's a Critic, the show must go on. And then, 1 and 2 is kind of about attitude is everything, and 7 is like, go for it, do it, step into the spotlight, stop eating Twinkies. So that's basically my book. You can save yourself $19.95. But it's basically about how you stand out from everyone else, using humor, using drama, using a story, using positioning, using branding, learning how to get publicity, learning how to speak in a compelling way. And the goal of all of that is to get people lined up to come see you so that you don't have to chase them, because most entrepreneurs and professionals, I remember when I was a lawyer, lawyers used to complain that they had to go on what they called beauty contests or auditions, right, where somebody had this claim that was going to be a lucrative action, a lucrative litigation, and they would interview 3-4 lawyers. And the lawyers felt, I'm a professional. How come I got to tap dance, with sequins on for this client, right? So my book is the answer to that, how to have them lined up for you instead of you chasing them.
Amen to that, because a lot of folks are going to need that nowadays, especially the introverted folks who like to let their work show for them. But I like what you mentioned, how just being great isn't enough, because there's a lot of great people out there, but nobody knows about them.
Look at this, okay? Rod Stewart, okay? The guy's what, like 97 and a half, can't sing, and he's still churning out hit albums, okay? And then you got other people who are great singers, and nobody's ever heard of them. Right? So what's the point? I mean, it's like that whole, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? If nobody knows you exist, then, it's great that you're great at what you do, but the whole point is, now, and again, a lot of people misunderstand me when I say, no, focus your attention on getting noticed, because, one of my mentors, Dan Kennedy, said something, I don't remember the exact phrase, but the idea was, don't promote till you get good, otherwise you're just promoting the fact that you're not good. Right, so I'm not saying that people should go out there and promote crap, right? In fact, what's his name? I think Guy Kawasaki said something like that. You can't brand crap, right? But But the idea is, yeah, of course you have to be good at, like, I don't even want to talk to you if you're not good at what you do. If you're not good at what you do, don't come to me, don't be my client, don't read my book. Like, it's not going to help you if you're not good at what you do. So the idea is not to fool anybody. The idea is that I'm assuming you're good at what you do. Like, don't try to impress me about how great you are. Like, I remember once I had clients, two sisters who had a business where they were making like homemade brownies and baskets and whatever, and I said to them, okay, why you? Like, they came for branding and marketing and positioning and publicity. I said, why you? And they said, because we're really great at what we do, because our brownies are the best. And I said to them, so? So, who doesn't have a cousin who makes great brownies? Like, it's got to be either something unique or something, some kind of angle, somebody's heard of you. There's got to be some kind of an angle on it. I have, sometimes I cut out ads that I see, and there was one, I can't put my finger on it right now, but it was like wine or beverages, right? There's always a million different cute names for these wines, and there was one that I think was called something like 19 Crimes. Again, I wish I could find it right now. But it was kind of showed this gangstery looking guy, and you're thinking to yourself, like, how is this going to sell wine? But it does. Because okay, think about like Marlboro cigarettes, right? They were trying to sell those. Philip Morris was trying to sell those to women in the 1920s by saying that they were mild as May and that their lipstick wouldn't smudge on it because they had a red tip and this whole thing. And women weren't buying them. So in the 50s, they threw a guy on a horse and they made it the preferred brand of cowboys, right? Well, I mean, you know better than me, Dom. There's like 23 cowboys in the whole U.S., but somehow it became a leading brand, right? So the question is, how did it become a leading brand? Well, my guess is that maybe an accountant or two snuck out and bought a pack, because who doesn't want to be this macho Marlboro man, right? So it's really all about that.
Amen to that, indeed. And you are right. It just got to take the right adjustment to actually be willing to adapt. So any advice for those out there who may be struggling to adapt with just the publicity and getting themselves out there?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I have a few clients who kind of don't want they've come to me for other aspects of what I do, but they don't want publicity because they're a little bit afraid. And to tell you the truth, I can't really blame them, because the minute you put yourself in the spotlight, guess what? You're in the spotlight. So anything you do can be scrutinized, and it's not like, there's going to necessarily be helicopters flying over your backyard to check through your garbage like with J-Lo or Madonna or whatever, right? But if if you're known, then you really are, you're transparent, you're out there. Like Gary Vaynerchuk, everybody loves Gary Vaynerchuk, right? But there was this whole big kerfuffle of, I don't know if it was last year, I think at the Cannes Film Festival, I think he had something to do with sponsoring a party, and there was some kind of an invite. I don't remember all the facts. There was some kind of an invite that wasn't politically correct, and I don't mean that I'm not saying that in a mocking way of political correctness. It wasn't a kind invitation. I think it focused on they only wanted attractive people or something. And I saw Gary Vaynerchuk for the first time in my life on a video where he didn't look composed and confident. It looked like he had just woken up at 4:30 in the morning, was making videos, and he said to his guys, come on, guys, you know me, like, I'm not like this, right? So he's in the spotlight. So anything that goes wrong that's associated with him or his company, is going to look bad, whereas if you're not in the spotlight, you don't. So I understand why people are fearful of it, but you have to understand how powerful it is for your business, because if you want to have a business, whether you're a professional, you work for somebody else, but you're responsible, like a lawyer or whatever, you're responsible for bringing in your own clients, or you want to just get promotions because you're visible, or if you're an entrepreneur where your lifeblood is getting in clients, then you don't really have a choice unless you want. It doesn't have to be you in the spotlight. So let's say you really don't want the spotlight, or you're introverted, or you're scared or whatever, put your product in the spotlight, right? Like, I have one client who she used to sleep late when she went to networking meetings, so she would miss that part where they had the 30 seconds where they had to introduce themselves because she was shy about it, right? And she came to me, and we worked on her 30 seconds, and she stopped being shy about it, and she started winning awards. I mean, she already had a successful business, but she got even more successful, not because of me, but it sure helped with the speaking. And now she's an in-demand speaker, and she has franchises across the country. But she didn't put herself always in the spotlight. Sometimes she drew this little logo kind of thing and created a character that she put in the spotlight. So you can hide behind a character if you don't want it to be you, but one way or another, something's got to be in the spotlight. It's got to be either your product or your service or you. Now, if it's you, it's nice because you get to tell a story, right? You get to remember Burt's Bees, which I think was now bought by Clorox, right? There was a guy named Bert, right? And he was this guy with a long beard, and some other woman found him, and together they put a business together, and they made all this stuff, and now it's sold by the last kind of brand that seems almost, the opposite of what it was originally. Or the Body Shop, they didn't pay for advertising, right? They got a lot of free publicity because they did things differently. They took little medicine bottles and hand-labeled them and, did all this cool stuff that people weren't doing and got free publicity. So many entrepreneurs and businesses spend money on advertising. And the crazy thing about advertising is your audience filters it out. Like, we don't even see it, right? Because we're so inundated.
You're so right about that. It's like ads on videos. It's like, yep, ad blocker. There we go.
Exactly. But a compelling story, right? A story of a lawyer who leaves law for the limelight. A story of an entrepreneur who grew up living in a chicken coop. I heard this at one of at a conference I went to. He grew up actually living in some little, like near a chicken coop or something. Brendan Burchard tells a story about how, and he's a multimillionaire now and coaches multimillionaires. He tells a story about when he was growing up in Montana, and they had this tent for about 2 weeks in the living room, and they all slept in the tent, and he didn't find out till years later it was because his parents couldn't afford to pay the heating bill. So they all slept together in the living room to keep each other warm, right? And he didn't know that as a kid. So he tells that. He tells the story of his accident in the Caribbean that made him realize that he had been given life's golden ticket. He had a second chance at life, and now he's devoted his life to helping other people. He tells that story every single time he gets on stage. I've heard it so many times I could tell that story in my sleep. It's identified with him, but it converts people into, fans and buyers because people like to know why you're doing what you're doing. They don't want to just see, it's another coach who's going to tell me how to get rich, or another coach who's going to tell me how to speak, or another, so for me, people come to me because they see the transition that I've made, lawyer, leaves to be a singer, actress, comedian, left law for the limelight, the whole thing. So once they start hearing my story, they're listening in a different way than if I stood up at a networking meeting and said, hi, I'm Tsufit, I'm a public speaking coach, or hi, I'm Tsufit, I'm a business and marketing and publicity coach. Like, so what, right? So what? You've got to tell a story. You've got to find your story. And a lot of people say to me, Tsufit, well, what if I don't have a story, right? What if I'm boring? What if, that's almost never the case, right? It's just almost never the case. And I've got countless stories of, I don't know if we have time for me to tell you one or two of them, but countless stories of clients who, when I just unearthed the little story, it really changed things for them.
Beautiful indeed. Feel free to share a story too if you want.
Sure. Okay, so I'll tell you about a couple of clients. Okay, so one of them, she came to me because she had to do a speech for a group of professional speakers, but she wasn't a professional speaker, but she had like a speaking agency. And she came to me and said, Tsufit, my speech is boring. So she did it for me, and I said, yeah, Susan, your speech is boring. That'll be $1,000. And then next. So anyway, so I interviewed her, and I found out that when she was 8, she used to help her dad take tomatoes to market. She grew up on a tomato farm. Well, that's colorful, right? Tomatoes are colorful. Right away we get an image, right? Right away she's not so boring. And I said to her, well, what if we made an analogy between speakers and tomatoes, right? What if we said that some speakers are like tomatoes, they're still green, they're still seedlings, they're not ready for market. Others are ripe and plump and juicy, and they're ready for market. And you know what? Some are just plain rotten, right? Like rotten tomatoes. So it was a perfect analogy. She went, she did her speech, she did the analogy, and there was a lineup of people waiting to speak to her. I'll just tell you one more brief one. Another client. Again, I would see her at networking meetings, and she would stand up and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and for all your graphic design needs, we do brochures and business cards and books and websites," and this whole long list of stuff she does, and she would sit down. And finally, one of her friends said, "You got to go see Tsufit." And for 2 years, she delayed, and finally, after 2 years, she reluctantly, all my sessions are prepaid. She prepaid me, and she said, "Okay, what you got? Well, let's see if you live up to your reputation." I said, "Okay, well, tell me your story." So she said, "There's no story. I'm boring." And I said, "Okay, tell me, where were you born?" "Switzerland." Tell me more about that." "Oh, I grew up in a 600-year-old farmhouse." "Okay, well, that's colorful, right?" "And it was at the top of a mountain in the Swiss Alps. And I loved books, and I used to have to go down the mountain to the library because I didn't own any books, right? So I had to go borrow books from the library." And I said to her, "Wouldn't it be cool if we said in your infomercial that your favorite book was Heidi?" And she said, "Tsufit, it actually was," right? Because she grew up in the Swiss Alps, right? Well, the reason I said, "Wouldn't it be cool if we said your favorite book was Heidi?" was because her name was Heidi, okay? You don't meet many Heidis at networking meetings. So anyway, she told this story. Oh, and one more thing. I told her to drop everything else. I said, "Stop saying you do business cards and you do websites and you do brochures and all this crap. No, just say you make books, because that goes with your story that you grew up with no books and you had to go down the mountain and you go to the library." Right? So she even changed her business name to wemakebooks.ca. That's the Canadian end to URLs. wemakebooks.ca, and that's what she now specializes in. I mean, she still does the other stuff, but when they come through the door, it's usually because of books, which is much more lucrative for her anyway. It's a much bigger thing than doing some business cards. And again, she said she did this at a networking meeting, and I think that there were like 10 people in this little circle because they divided it in circles, and 8 of them wanted her card. So that's the power of finding your story. And by the way, you asked me earlier about publicity. Finding your story is good for, just telling it online, telling it in a video online, telling it on your website, telling it on a podcast, telling it at a networking meeting, but it's also good to tell it to a journalist, right? It's good if you're interviewed on the radio. It's good if you're interviewed for Entrepreneur Magazine, which I have been blessed to have been. You got to have a story or they're not interested. So find your story.
Oh, yeah, and Forbes too.
Yeah.
Well, all right, and the question I like to ask every guest, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 in the current year of 2018 and you get to keep all of your experience, what would be the first piece of advice you give to yourself?
Chill out, baby. Chill out. Okay, so I was way too serious at 25. I became a lawyer, I think, at 27. So I finished undergrad probably around 24. Actually, I did one very smart thing though. I got into law school. I told you it's the best law school in Canada, hardest to get into. And I did my first year after 4 years of undergrad. And I did something that everybody warned me not to do. Everybody said I was nuts. I took a year off. And I went with my boyfriend, who was working on his PhD at the time, and traveled the world. We traveled the Middle East and Europe. And the whole year, worked on kibbutz in Israel, took a Eurail pass all through Europe, and that was a really good thing to do because, it's a lot harder to do it when you got, 4 kids and a mortgage later, because it was a long time that I didn't travel, I did, a few little vacation-y things, but not like a serious, go to somewhere cool place. So that's it. Like, don't think that you have to push it all till you're older. Like, I guess that's kind of the idea behind Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book. His basic premise in the 4-Hour Workweek is you don't have to wait till retirement to start doing stuff, right? Everybody says, I'm going to save my whole life for retirement. He says take little mini retirements. And actually, when I read that book, my daughter was in university. In the middle of reading the book, I said to her, my eldest daughter, I said, you know what, let's go to Spain. We'd been talking about it for a while. And we just did. We went to Spain and Portugal. We didn't wait until we could. We just did it.
Beautiful. Beautiful indeed. Beautiful indeed. Chill out and don't wait.
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing. This is not my 25-year-old self. This is my current self. I try to have a theme, or at least this year my theme is travel light. Travel light. So it's travel light of resentments, travel light of guilt, travel light of stuff. Like I've been giving away thousands of books and clothes, and like how much stuff can a person have, right? Travel light of weight. I've shed some weight. Like just travel light. Like don't be so. And that's related to the chill out thing, right? There's only so much we can carry on our shoulders, mentally, physically, emotionally. We got to learn to chill out, travel light, and not take everything so seriously.
Amen to that. Amen to that. But for those who are serious about upping up their publicity game, how do we keep in touch with you and all that you're doing?
All right. So there's a few ways. Grab a pen, boys and girls. Here we go. Number one, grab the book. Step into the spotlight. You can grab that at spotlightbook.com. www.spotlightbook.com. That will take you to Amazon where you can get the book, number one. Number two, go to spotlightsecrets, with an S at the end, .com, spotlightsecrets.com, and put your name and email in there, and you will get a free series of secrets about how to stand out in 30 seconds, which is going to attract not only publicity but attract clients, number two. Number three, you're welcome to come join my LinkedIn group, which Dom just did today. Go to spotlightgroup.biz, spotlightgroup.biz. Send me a connection request. Tell me you heard it on Dom's show, because I don't admit everybody to this group. It's a pretty exclusive group. But tell me you heard me on Dom's show, and if I like you, I'll let you in. If you want to know more about me, you can go to tsufit.com, tsufit.com. But I would start with the Spotlight Secrets, and that way you can reply to any one of those, and my people will make sure that I see it personally, and I will respond to you personally.
Woohoo! Beautiful indeed. Well, thanks a bunch for gracing us with your wonderful content, six-pack of awesomeness.
Six-pack of awesomeness. Oh, my goodness. That should go on my website. What a nice thing to say, Dom, and congratulations on your show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's the key to connecting with wonderful folks like yourself.
Awesome.
Hey there, buddy. Looks like you made it to the end of this episode. Since you made it to the end of this episode, do both of us a favor and stop being greedy. Stop it right now. And share this episode with your friends and your fellow podcast lovers, especially those who have book clubs and want to listen to the authors who write some amazing books. Be sure to check out the rest of the backlog too while you're at it, and share all those too. And in order to make the rest of your week the best of your week, remember to advance others, to advance yourself.